Hey guys, and welcome to the second part of my round development video log. If you're new here, then this is my small series where I take you through how I develop a round for my Hero Defense Warcraft 3 map called Gladiator. Alright, last time we came up with the round idea, finished creating the units and added all the units into the round. And also, of course, set up the basic round structure in the code. This means that we're ready to get started with the mechanics of the units in the round. And I'm actually thinking that we will start with a more interesting mechanic, which I talked about last time, which is the tornado ability for the Naga Storm Callers. Alright, let me just really quick explain how that tornado ability is going to work. So when they spawn, they will start channeling the ability, and they will keep channeling as long as they are alive. When they start the channel, they will spawn a tornado for each of the gladiators in the arena. Now it's only one, because we haven't implemented any multiplayer yet. The tornado will then follow the gladiator that it's assigned to, and if any gladiator is standing near a tornado, they will take damage periodically. So the idea is that you have to run away from these tornadoes. Alright, so I think this introduction has lasted for long enough. Let's just get started programming this ability and see where it goes. Alright, so we're jumping straight into the programming this time. I'm programming in Wurst, and if you don't know what Wurst is, then I can briefly explain it as a programming language with which you can create Warcraft 3 maps. In this video, or any other videos in this series for that matter, I won't go into too much detail with the code. I will of course explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, but the syntax and all that I won't explain. But if you want me to elaborate a little bit on the Wurst part, then just leave a comment down below. Anyways, let's just get back to what's going on in the video right now. So the very first thing that we're actually doing here is creating the ability. And this is one of the places where Wurst is really powerful, because I can actually make an ability without even entering the world editor. So the ability in itself, which we're creating here, is just a placeholder ability which is meant to keep the Stormcallers occupied. And the placeholder ability is built upon the Tranquility ability from the Keeper of the Grove. Alright, so here I'm just changing the settings for this ability so that it actually doesn't do anything at all. And I'm also just setting the duration to be incredibly high so that they won't stop casting this in the middle of the fight. So it's a good idea to keep testing while you're creating. So I just created the ability, and therefore I'm just going to test if the ability even works as I intended. Alright, so it's kind of working. The ability is there, and the unit can cast it, and there's no cooldown, there is no mana cost on it. But if you notice something, then, well, the effect is kind of still there, isn't it? Okay, so I just tried to fix this with the effect, but I kind of had a hard time figuring out which one I actually had to change in order to remove the effect. But in the end, I figured out, and look at this. We have an ability which does absolutely nothing. Okay, so the next step is to make what we call a class in Wurst, which is basically a blueprint for objects. And we have to make a class for this tornado ability, which keeps track of each unit's casting. This class is the point in our code where we are controlling the abilities, such as keeping track of the tornadoes that the ability spawns. And again, we're going to test this, and we want to test here that the update is running and the ability is stopped correctly when the caster stops casting it. Now this will print a line every time it updates and checks if the caster is still casting and the caster is still alive. And we're also just checking that the system is stopping correctly when the caster stops casting. And everything seems to be working just fine. So I realized the casting of this ability looks a little bit dull, so I decided to add an animation effect to the caster. But these Naga Siren actually don't even have a channel ability, which is kinda odd because I'm quite sure there's a mission where you see them channel something. But the way around this is basically to keep repeating their spell animation, which is what I'm doing here. I'm just adding a timer which keeps restarting this spell animation. And look at that, that looks pretty cool. I'm quite happy with that. However, I just realized that they don't do the animation at first, so you have to wait like those 1.5 seconds before they start the animation, even though the ability actually has started. So I just quickly added that. Cool. So now we have a pretty boring ability. It looks cool when they're casting it, but it doesn't really do anything. But of course, that's going to be the next step in the process. Alright, perhaps that was a little bit of a lie. We're not going to make the ability cool just yet, because we have to make the tornadoes first. And actually we can make the tornadoes quite separate from the ability to begin with. And then we add the tornadoes later. And the first step in that process is to figure out how the tornadoes are going to look. So that's just what I'm trying to do here. Trying out different sizes and figuring out if I have to change the color of the tornado, which I realized you actually could. That's pretty cool. So we have to create a new class for the tornado, which keeps track of the tornado effect and the tornado's ability. It's also going to keep track of all the damage stats and all, but we're just going to wait with that just a little bit. The moving of the tornado is quite simple. I just have a timer which keeps updating the position to move a little bit further towards the gladiator, which is the tornado's target. Just for testing purposes, we are going to add one tornado when the ability is being cast. Wait, what? Apparently we've succeeded in creating partly invisible tornado. Okay, so clearly something has gone wrong with the coloring here, or at least so I thought. After trying a few attempts on fixing the coloring, I realized that I have made a mistake. I didn't use the model which I thought I used. Apparently there are a lot of models for tornadoes, so I tried and figure out which one was the correct one, and sure enough that seemed to fix the problem. I mean, come on, how easy was that? That looks pretty cool. I mean, they don't do any damage, but it looks cool. That is all that counts, right? Okay, so even though I'm saying it looks cool, I think it could look better. The thing is, these tornadoes are actually meant to be big, or the model is at least. Which means when you compress it down to a smaller size, it gets a little bit intense. You see all this kind of glowing effect around it. Instead, I realized that there is a smaller model for a small tornado which doesn't even have this glowing effect. So I just found the model for that instead, implemented that, and this is what it ended up looking like. Alright, now it looks cool. Okay, let's be honest. It's not enough that it looks cool. It kinda has to do some sort of damage, right? So I just added a new timer which deals damage to all units around the tornado every second. And I thought that was really easy to implement, but I even failed at that. I realized that I wasn't registering the source of the damage correctly, and therefore no damage will be dealt. So here we go, now we have damage dealing tornadoes. Alright, now we've been working so hard on actually creating tornadoes, but we also have to destroy them again. So I just implemented a really simple solution which checks every time the tornado moves if the unit which it is targeting is still alive. And if it's not, well then it should destroy the tornado. Of course, we should also destroy the tornado if the source is dead. So I just added an exact copy of the other code, which just checks the source instead of the target. But this didn't work the first time around because I added functionality into the class, which enables me to turn off the triggering of destroying the tornado when the source dies. And I had turned that off, so of course I had to enable that before anything worked. But now everything seems to work just like it should. I thought that adding the tornado to the ability as I did was a temporary solution, But in the end, I actually decided that it works just fine as is. So instead of changing anything, I'll just keep it just like it is right now. So for the final test, I just removed all the printing statements and added a lot more naggers. And this is the result of all the work that we've done so far. So that's actually the end of this episode. We've created one of the mechanics for the rounds, but we still have a few more to go. And we actually even have a mechanic still for the Stormcaller. I mentioned it in the first episode, which is the emulation kind of ability that she'll have. So the next time we'll take a look at that, and we'll also dive into the Myrmidon's abilities. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. If you want to know when the next episode is coming out, just subscribe, and if you like the video, hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.